What's up, everyone, and welcome to Project XTalk, an Xbox podcast, episode number 167, presented by Save the Game Media. I'm your host, Kevin, and on today's episode, we're recapping that amazing Xbox Developer Direct. We have a Game Pass update. Satya Nadella's been making some interesting comments about the future of Xbox and our subscription services in trouble. But before we get to all that, got to introduce my co-host, JamPackSam. How you doing, buddy?
Hello. I'm doing very well. We're coming off of a very hot developer direct. We'll get into it more, but it feels good to kind of get out of the doldrums of winter where you're coming off of the Game Awards and then the holidays come up. And then there's this multi-week period of like, wow, I have nothing significant to look forward to. So this was the thing. You're getting excited again. We've got some big games on the way, but I'm feeling good.
Yep, but this is like the kickoff to the winter showcases, right?
Yes.
Like Xbox, and then I'm sure PlayStation State of Play is right around the corner. Nintendo always does a direct in February, so the games are gonna start like showcase after showcase, more announcements. I'm excited.
Yeah, you can feel the hype starting to build. And I mean, 2024, like we went from the front half being a little bit packed to now it's like, wow, if this all pans out, it's a pretty big year.
This is a pretty big year. But before we get into all that, I got to give our housekeeping out of the way. So this is Project XTalk. We're live every Thursday right here on YouTube. If you can't catch us live, we post every Friday morning on your favorite audio platform of choice. While you're over there, make sure to drop us that 5-star review, whether it's Apple, Spotify. It does help us greatly. If you want to support us and get early access to Save the Game media content like exclusive bonus post shows, the host versus host fantasy critic draft that we just did this week, where Sam and I don't humble brag here, we're gonna crush every single
100%.
one of them. Yeah, our team is looking good, so go check that out if you haven't. And you can also try a free 7-day trial if you don't want to drop that $1, just like the good sir has. He has signed up for that 1-week free trial, checking out all the Patreon content. So we got to shout out our Patreon supporters: Fabulous Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai Knight, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, Mimi J, David Hotwright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Alpaca Tom, and Lee Navarro. Thank you all for your support. We appreciate each and every one of you. Sam, I'm going quick. I'm excited. I want to get through the housekeeping, and I want to get into what we've been playing because we have a jam-packed show.
Oh, we absolutely do, man. We absolutely do. I, on my side, have been playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I rolled credits this morning.
Ooh, how long?
I believe it was about, for me, 25 hours or so. And obviously, huge thanks to Ubisoft for sending over a code, got early access to the game. So I've been playing it for a week since the early access kind of rolled out to all of the Ubisoft Creator Program participants. But wow, it's a really, really good Metroidvania game. And it's got huge sprawling map, really enjoyable combat. And it's actually got a surprising amount of difficulty. Like I was kind of struggling at certain points, but you can feel yourself learning the bosses, kind of like a Souls game that I've been coming off of. And you can feel yourself learning the areas. I'll have to come back when I have more powers unlocked, that kind of thing. But I was really shocked by it. I didn't go in expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. But if I had to on the spot rate it today, probably 8.5 out of 10, somewhere around there.
Nice.
So starting off the year strong, really enjoyed it. And I'm definitely ready to move on to the next thing. But it didn't overstay its welcome as far as a main story goes. And there's still a ton of side stuff for the people that want to go back and have more game after the main story.
Yeah, I've been watching a friend of the show, Sean Capri, and Seth Sturgill over there, Carpool Gaming. They've been playing it, streaming it. I'll put it on while I'm working and just watch them play. I watched Sean beat some giant snake boss today, and I was like, this game looks dope, but I know if I played it, I would get so frustrated about like the parrying and all. And I know there's a bunch of accessibility options, but everyone is singing its praises. That's all I know.
It's a very good game, and I think it's cool because it's reestablished the identity for Prince of Persia, where if they choose to do this, this can be the new status of Prince of Persia. This is the new start for it. So it's cool to see a legacy franchise like that come back in a way that not only respects the source, but that brings it in a modern way that people enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next on the docket now that you've wrapped that up?
I don't know. I was waiting for the surprise drop at the developer direct.
No shadow
Didn't get
drop.
that. I think that the next thing that I'm going to be turning my attention to is actually Pal World dropping in early access tomorrow on Xbox Game Pass. So I'm going to try Pokemon with guns, see how it feels.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Pal World a little later
Oh
in the
yeah.
show because I got some thoughts about Pal World. Tell
Yeah,
you
yeah.
what.
I'll be the one to take the hit. I'll give it a shot. I'll let you guys know if it's good or not. I promise.
Well, for me, I've been continuing my deep dive into the Ratchet and Clank series over on PlayStation. Getting the most out of my PS Plus Premium subscription before that goes away, and I probably won't renew it because it's $180 or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Um, so I was on as I mentioned last week. I was playing Up Your Arsenal, and I was on the
Mhm.
last world, and I have thrown in the towel on Up Your Arsenal.
Tossing the towel in.
Same exact issue that I had with going commando. The last world is absurdly difficult. And
Mm.
then I no lie, I spent probably 45 minutes, an hour going through the level. And I was like going so slow, taking my time, taking out the enemies. Like I had gone through it a few times at this point. Like I knew where people were going to pop up, the timing. Like if I cross a certain boundary, the enemy was going to show up. And then I just died, and there's like a difficulty platforming section in there too, which was frustrating. But I died and went all the way back to the beginning of the world. And I said, nope, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is where we wrap it up with this game.
Yeah, based on that description, I would not recommend you play Prince of Persia if that's the if that's the way you're going about things. But hey, like I said last week, if you're not enjoying it, totally cool to stop playing it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so I jumped over to Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault, which unbeknownst to me was a tower defense game, and
Really?
yes, so apparently all the Ratchet and Clank games are not just action platformers. There are
Wow.
different types of games, and this is one of them where it's a tower defense game. It was very short. I did beat this one. It's not absurdly difficult. You can play it co-op, online or in person, because it's like the PS3 era where they were really pushing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I had fun time with it. I think it plays really well. Like I like tower defense games, so it's not exactly what I wanted out of Ratchet and Clank, but it was a fun enough experience.
Yeah.
So that one's good with me. Then I went to All for One because listen, I've been through it this week with Ratchet. I went to All for One. This is also not a normal Ratchet and Clank game, Sam. This is a Marvel Ultimate Alliance style Ratchet and Clank game that doesn't work at all. It's supposed to be played with 4 players, clearly. You can play with 1 player, and then you get an AI co-op bot, and the
Mm.
AI is awful. Like Clank would just jump off the edge and kill himself all the time. The shooting feels terrible. You can't control the camera. Like this game does not work at all.
Wow. Yeah, it looks like this one came out in 2011. I'm trying to think back to like the trends at that time. It feels like, I mean, all 4-1 is in the name. It's probably the 4-player co-op thing, like you were saying. So,
It is.
yeah, interesting that I don't know. I never realized the Ratchet and Clank wasn't just, a Ratchet and Clank game. I didn't know that these
Same.
games existed. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when I booed these ones up. So I've dropped that one. That one's not good at all. I am playing Tools of Destruction, which I think is the first PlayStation 3 Ratchet and Clank game that came out.
Mhm.
And this one is good. This is a normal Ratchet and Clank game, not absurdly difficult. Apparently, this is the easiest one in the series. I'm having a great time. I'm gonna wrap this one up before the onslaught of JRPGs comes out next week.
Nice. Yeah, I remember this one being a visual showcase game for the
It
PS3
is
where
very pretty still.
yeah. So that's cool. I like having those little moments in time of like, hey, this is what the PS3 can do, kind of like Ratchet and Clank on the PS5. So that's neat.
Yeah, absolutely. And last game I want to talk about, this one's on Xbox, and it's on Xbox Game Pass.
Ooh.
Turnip Boy Robs a Bank, which I told you we should pick for our Fantasy Critic League, and now it's dropping to like at 83 or something. Maybe
Yeah.
it could have been a good. We'll pick up some of our ones, but
Yeah.
I have played about an hour of Turnip Boy Robs a Bank, and I think I'm done with Turnip Boy Robs a Bank.
Let me tell you, once you played 15 minutes, you've played Turner Boy Robs a Bank. That's it.
So I 100%ed Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Like I actually enjoyed my time with it. I got all the achievements. It's only like 3-4 hours long or something. This game, I didn't know until this morning, was a roguelite, and it is so boring. I have robbed the same part of the same bank. There's one bank with different, like you go through different doors in the bank, but when you go through the doors, like once you find the door, the area looks the same every time. I robbed the same area 6-7 times at this point, and I'm just done.
Mm.
I'm bored. I'm like, I'm not making any progress. I come back. It's like, you got $1,200 this time. I'm like, great. I'll go buy a few upgrades and then feel exactly the same and go do it again. What am I like? I don't understand the point of this game. Nothing is like explained to me. So I think I'm done with this one. This is a roguelite, not for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about tax evasion. I was thinking
Yeah,
about
that's a great game.
yeah, it's a good game, but again, like the gameplay repeats itself. Like once
Hmm.
you've played it for 10 minutes, you know what you're going to be getting, and it's going to be that with like different little quirky characters and stuff. So that's interesting to hear you say that about Rob's the Bank. I might give it a shot this weekend. Like you said, it's on Game Pass, so I feel like I can dive in. But yeah, I mean, the reviews are shockingly good
I know.
considering what we're talking about. But yeah, well, hey, if you drop it, you drop it, and then that'll free up more Ratchet and Clank time.
Roguelites, man. It's for every one roguelite I like, it's 100 that I don't. Swear to
There are
God.
a lot of them, though. There's a ton.
That I
There are
know.
a ton out there. So
Well, Turnip Boy, you let me down. But enough about Turnip Boy. Let's get into what everyone wants to talk about. If I could pull up the sidebar here, and I didn't do the things, but the developer direct recap happened today, a few hours ago, as of recording. That is not what I'm looking for there. Did you watch the whole thing? I assume, Sam.
I did. Let me preface that. I watched the entire thing. Definitely just hit that plus 15 seconds button on the Ara History Untold section because, like, as soon as they went into that, we'll talk about that more. I watched.
Mhm.
I watched it. I
You
did. I
watched
did
it.
take in all the content. Yes.
All right, so let's recap it. Starting off, just we'll go through exactly like they did. We're going to start off with Avowed. We got a gameplay deep dive. They talked about customizable loadouts. You can quick switch through when you're fighting in the world between magic, spell casting, melee weapons. They stressed the importance of choice and consequence. They showed off this side quest where you could either believe a guy that was clearly lying, or you could call him out on his nonsense, and then he might challenge you to a fight, kind of stressing the RPG elements. And they gave us a release window of this fall. So, Sam, what were your impressions of Avowed based on this trailer?
So Avowed looks way better to me than it did last year. Whenever they showed it off during the showcase in June, the environments didn't look as detailed. It just didn't have a certain level of polish on it. And so going into the presentation today, I wasn't really sure what to expect. But coming out of it, it looks visually very impressive. I was pretty impressed with the way that the conversations, the dialogue trees are. I mean, it's not blowing anyone's mind or revelatory in any way of like really pushing things forward, but it gets the job done. So I think that for me, Avowed is something I'm very excited about. Obviously, we talked about that, a couple of shows ago or on last week's show. But what my concern is with Avowed is that we're going to come away from it if the writing isn't good of thinking this is like if I told an AI generator to make me a fantasy RPG, if it doesn't have the stories there and the characters there that can kind of build it out and make this big, beautiful world worthwhile, then, to what end? Now, we're talking about Obsidian. They've got some good stories. They do the Outer World. So I'm excited to hear more about what they're actually going to be doing with these set pieces and these characters and things. But as far as like the elements that are in place, pretty pumped about that.
Mhm. I like that they highlighted choice and consequence. That's something I always look for in my RPGs. I like Obsidian. The Outer Worlds didn't really like nothing appealed to me about that. I was like, I'm just gonna wait for Starfield. This looks great to me. I agree with you that I think this has had a visual upgrade since we last saw it. Everything seemed more vibrant. I think the character models look a lot better. I saw some people calling this Elder Scrolls Light and saying that they had those dead eyes from the from 2011 Bethesda. I don't personally agree with that. I think the game does look good. I see Luke in the chat here saying Avowed's combat looks like a 2006 mobile game. The rest of it looks good. And I've seen that sentiment actually at quite a few places. If you go to the Xbox subreddit, man, are they tearing Avowed apart. And that is really surprising to me, as when I was watching, I was like, this game looks great. I know I was texting with Kyle, my brother, talking about how they said like you can dual wield wands and like just be a spellcaster because that's like how he's going to
Yeah.
want to play that game. And then for me, like sword to shield, like there was a lot of variety in the combat, and I thought it just looked like Skyrim combat, to be honest. Like, yeah, sure, it's a little slow, but like that is kind of how what I associate like Western RPGs with. And I know people have kind of they think of like The Witcher now, but for me, I'm okay with how this, like, Bethesda's games I love, and this looks like a Bethesda game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at with it, in that it definitely looks like a Bethesda game. It looks like it is going to play like Skyrim. I would also say, I know that we talk about Immortals of Avium between, all these shows that we all kind of have communities that overlap, but coming off of a game that did magic combat so well, I
Mhm.
think that Avowed, not that everybody's going to be comparing these two because they're very different entities, but Immortals did it really well, and then Avowed, depending on how it plays, might feel like it might do the magic combat a little lesser than. Um, but I think if you go in expecting something that does feel like a Western RPG, like you said, like Skyrim, then you're probably going to have that expectation met. But Luke raises a great question and a good point of, it's 2024. Can the 2011 Skyrim combat, and should it still fly if we're looking at things that are innovating and trying to push combat forward? So it'll be interesting to see if gameplay holds it back. Personally, I'm with you in that it doesn't bother me. I'm still
Mhm.
excited about it. And it's kind of what I would expect. But between now and then, I am going to go back and play through the Outer Worlds and just kind of get a feel for how Obsidian does things again, and have that kind of mindset going into it.
I know if I play Avowed and love it, that, like, I will go back and give the Outer Worlds, like, another shot, just because I'll be in that mindset of wanting that experience. I almost did it when Starfield came out. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
done with Starfield, but maybe, maybe I go jump into this one. Coming out this fall, does that surprise you?
I don't think that it surprises me. I think that it, if anything, shows they have a little bit more confidence in it than maybe I thought that they would. If this had been like a August game, then that could have been like the late summer drop, and it's kind of getting into the fall season, but it's not quite in the thick of it. So they're trying to get it out before a big influx of games. But if this is the fall game, well, hey, you might feel pretty good about it. So I don't have any concerns about the release date or the release time frame, but I feel good about fall.
I will say, I think fall is good. Just make sure you give it enough time between Stalker 2, because we got that release date this week, which isn't in the show notes, but September 6th, I believe,
Fifth
is
or sixth, yeah, one
yeah,
of the two.
yeah, one of those two. So make sure about, like, October, I think would be good. If you have Stalker 2 in September, Avowed in October, I think that would be a very good cadence.
Yes, Stalker 2 is September 5th,
5th,
2024. Yeah.
September 5th. Okay, yeah. So I'm Avowed for the fall completely where I expected this one to land. Not their, I still don't think this is their biggest game this year, like their blockbuster game for the year, to be honest with you, because we'll talk about what's coming up. But I'm very pleasantly surprised with what I saw from Avowed, and Captain Logan just brings it back to the combat. I think this is the product of us not having more variants in FPS games that aren't shooters, and I think that's a very good point, because when you see most first person games are shooters, so they play a little faster. Like you were talking with Immortals of Avium with the
Mhm.
magic, which essentially was just different guns that look reskinned as magic. So when you get something that isn't that in first person, you're like, it can look a little slow and clunky, I think.
Yeah, it definitely can, and I don't think we'll really know how it plays until we get our hands on it and kind of see more of it in action whenever you're actually behind the controller, because who knows how this thing actually plays. I thought that the double wand magic
Hmm.
submachine gun combo situation, I thought that looked great, so I'm
Yeah.
pumped about it. That's going to be my build probably, but I'm excited to see what people come up with.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling, because up next, Senua Saga Hellblade 2. Went over the Ninja Theory. They talked about some story beats, how Senua has made peace with her past, but she's still dealing with those voices in her head. Apparently, she's going to be meeting some new characters in this story, as opposed to the first one, which was more of a solo experience. They showed a little bit of her talking with someone else, just really showing that character growth in between games, which I think is vital. They talked about the setting. It's Iceland. She's hunting down the Vikings that originally raided her village. The puzzles that everyone loved apparently seemingly have returned, because I saw the symbols, and they talked about how the puzzles just coming back. They did confirm they've redone the entirety of combat. And this line I wanted to highlight, because I think this is important. They said Senua is not a superhero. They want players to feel the struggle in combat, like you barely got out of that encounter alive.
Yeah, this looked so good. It really is a very, very visually great looking game. And I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the longest piece of combat we kind of have seen in any one take, right? Or have we seen longer combat sequences?
We've seen the last trailer had more total combat. I don't know, but that was like cut, like it was broke.
Yeah.
I think this might have been the longest uninterrupted sequence.
Yeah, because whenever I was watching it, that's what stood out to me is that it was at the part where they were talking about how they want the player to feel like they're struggling with the combat and that they just made it out alive. And so as they talked about that, you can really see this one sequence where you're like, wow, she might actually get overwhelmed right now. It's almost like a cutscene that pops up whenever you're at the end of like getting killed in The Last of Us Part 2 or something, where you're getting ripped in half or whatever the situation is.
Hmm.
Um, but like visually, that is there as this beautiful kind of like, I don't want to use the word set piece again, but it's just a really impressive looking game. But the gameplay is also looking like it complements the visuals really well. So they have a nice synergy going on.
Yeah, I'm glad that they confirmed that they redid the combat, and I like their explanation for why like Senua isn't just like shrugging people off. Kind of like people were comparing like to God of War, right? We've heard that comparison, Hellblade
Mhm.
and God of War, and Kratos is a god, so it makes sense when he has a shield, he's bashing people away, like throwing them through the air, and that's not Senua. It's like she's a human being, and they
Mhm.
kind of doubled down on that. I think the game visually still stunning. This might be the best looking game of this generation so far for sure. There's one sequence in there, like when she gets bit in the shoulder, and just the emotion and everything they capture on her face is absolutely phenomenal. But I want to talk about the release date, which unfortunately was leaked a few days ago ahead of the showcase. But it is confirmed May 21st, 2024. We only have to wait about 4 months to play Hellblade 2.
Yes, finally, very excited. If they hadn't had a release date, it would have been a huge miss just because we've
Hmm.
seen this game so many times. I feel like they had to put a release date out. So I was really, really happy to see that. And I think it's a great summer game. It just kind of feels right. I think that for me, it was either Avowed in May and Hellblade in the fall, or Hellblade in May and Avowed in the fall. And so it turned out to be the latter.
Yep. Yeah, we debated May. I wasn't expecting. I'm very happy that it's so soon. Especially because May is kind of a month I don't really have much going on. Like the summer is, I'll be on. I have a week of vacation, and my worry was it was going to drop like end of July, and I would have to be away with it taunting me.
Yeah.
Luckily, that's not the case, but it's not all rainbows and butterflies here, Sam. Apparently, because I've seen my next piece of news I'm going to bring up. I've seen some people pretty upset about what they're reading here, and that is Xbox has confirmed Hellblade 2 is a digital only title. It will get no physical release. It'll cost $50 USD, and they confirmed the game is roughly the same length as the original Hellblade. So about 6 to 8 hours, if maybe 10, if you're taking your time with it. How do you feel about you can go physical, no physical, and then the
Mhm.
length of the game?
So, with no physical, I think that we're getting to a point where this is going to become more and more of the norm. And I made a video on this on my own channel talking about how we are actively watching the decline of physical games as time goes on. With Alan Wake 2 missing the physical release, at least in any kind of official capacity, there could be, a limited run or something down the line. But that was a big game last year that skipped. Game in the UK is getting out of selling pre-owned games, so the pre-owned market is declining over there. And then you see, like, I think the statistic was 4% of games on PlayStation 4 or 5. Correct me
Mm,
in the comments if I'm wrong, but only a fraction of the overall player base is even buying physical games.
hmm.
Um, in comparison to digital, because it's so convenient and the sales are there and things like that. So physical games are just declining. And I think that there's no difference here than with Alan Wake 2, where the game is $50, so it's cheaper than a full physical release. On top of that, if it was going to be physical, would that bring the price up 60, $70? And then, like you talked about the length of it, would fans balk at the idea of a 6 to 8 hour potential game for 60 or $70 versus 50, where it might feel a little bit more achievable there. um it doesn't bother me that much. Obviously, I'm playing it on Game Pass, so it wouldn't have bothered me anyway, but it is a bummer that we're finally getting out of this physical era. And I say that as somebody who buys physical games. I love collecting physical games. I love looking at my shelf full of boxes. Those days are about to be gone. Like, that's just the reality of where we're at. And it's a really weird time. Now, when it comes to the length of the game, every developer and every studio should make the right length of game that matches what they want to put out. There's no sense in dragging your story out beyond the realm of reason if you don't have a good story to tell. So if the story of Senua for Hellblade 2 can be told in 8 hours, sure. 10 hours, short. 40 hours, great, whatever. As long as you've got a good story there and you keep me engaged through it, then that's all that matters. Admittedly, though, we've been building this game up a
Mm-hmm.
lot through the years, a ton. Like this, like we're talking about it as one of the standout Xbox games of the year. Not to say that it won't be just because it's 8 to 10 hours potentially, but after years and years of build up and anticipation and putting this as one of your sizzle reel trailer showcase titles, that's it, like that's all you've got. Again, I'm sure it's going to be great. I just wish there was more of it going into it.
That leads me to Ghostly March's question. The wrote in on Discord. Like, you can click the link down below. Says, do you think the digital only and the $50 price tag will hurt the public expectations or reception to this game? So, I I'm seeing this as well, where people are now having to reassess their expectations for Hellblade, because I admittedly am one of those people as well, because I think Xbox has kind of propped this up as this is going to be a tent pole title, like one of our biggest releases of the generation. Like, get excited for this. Like, that's how it's come across every time we've seen it. Like, they've showed it off. The way they've talked about it. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be a great game, because I think it's going to be a great game. I tweeted, I'm like, price and length do not like determine quality. They are completely
Mhm.
are nowhere connected. But I do understand there are people that will be disappointed and now have to think, okay, well, this is clearly a smaller title for Xbox. This isn't the blockbuster God of War competitor that everyone is kind of hyping it up to be. And not to say it can't come out and score in the 90s, like I think, but it's not that scale.
Yeah. And I mean, we always talk about, or at least I know I always talk about how I'm fine with shorter games. I do not have a lot of time to play games compared to 5 years ago or 10 years
Hmm.
ago. So the fact that I could finish this game in a weekend or less than a week, like I could finish this in half the time it took me to finish Prince of Persia, from a scheduling standpoint, if we're talking about getting through stuff,
Hmm.
great, cool, checking it off the list, but equally it's been so long, it's been built up so much. I don't know if this is the game that I expected to be the check it off the list kind of thing in terms of game length. So I'm still very, very excited about it. And I think that it has the potential to be more impactful in 8 hours than most games are in 50.
Yeah.
So it's really up to the studio to deliver on that. And I really do think they will. I do agree, though. Feels like I wish there was more there going into it.
Yeah, and we'll obviously have to play it, but if those 8 to 10 hours are phenomenal and I
Mhm.
walk away like that was one of the best stories, like I have no complaints, that's all I need. Because there have been games specifically in recent years, I know, like, and I'm not trying to be console fanboy here, but like I think God of War Ragnarok needed an editor, 5 to 10 hours too long. I know people think that about The Last of Us Part 2 as well, that's a few hours too long. So these narrative games can overstay their welcome. So part of me is also like, okay, seems that they're keeping it tight, no filler, none of this like in between nonsense that some other games are suffering with, and we're just going to get through the meat, the story, and enjoy the game, and that's all I want. But I understand other people's opinions of that they want, especially if they're not playing on Game Pass, if they're paying for it, they want their money's worth.
Yeah, the Game Pass element's really interesting to bring up here because, like, I don't have skin in the game as far
Hmm.
as me handing you a $50 bill and getting a game or digitally through PayPal, a $50 digital bill because we can't hand people money in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
situation. Um, but yeah, if you have actual skin in the game and you're spending $50, you probably have an expectation of more game. But I'm painting this picture of like, if it is visually as impressive as it looks right now, you boot up your Xbox and it's 8 hours of single cut, like narrative driven cinematic experience with killer gameplay. I'm down. Like that sounds awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it, but I understand the complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Um, We have another question for Ghostly March. Probably should have asked this sooner, but he said, Avowed looks fantastic. If Avowed hits, is it safe to say Obsidian is Xbox's best studio?
Uh, that's tough. I mean,
Because we
how
all
many
have
do
our
we have at this
personal
point?
biases. Yeah, we got like 34, something
Yeah,
like
I was
that.
gonna say let me pull up the Excel spreadsheet with all 38 or 40 of their studios. I mean, it's all very subjective. What is the best, I guess, would be what provides the most value in that case. Probably like an Infinity Ward or a Treyarch at this point would be the one that's like giving you the most revenue in terms of the most diverse, in terms of what they can put out. Obsidian's probably pretty far up there
Mhm.
between Grounded and Pillars of Eternity and Avowed. Like there's a wide swath there. Um, but I guess it depends on the way that you want to frame it up.
Yeah, define best. I think for this generation, if we're talking workhorse, Obsidian
Mhm.
for sure. Like their output has been nothing short of phenomenal there. Captain Logan in the chat says, "Will more people beat Hellblade 2 or God of War Ragnarok?"
Probably Hellblade 2, depending. Well, actually, then you got to bake in the player count. More people are probably having played God of War Ragnarok, and I don't know. That would be interesting. Maybe it'll have the same completion rate, but one because fewer people played it and more people finished it, and one because more people played it and just with more people playing it, more people finished it. I don't know.
I'm gonna go God of War Ragnarok, unfortunately, because I think a lot of people will play 30 minutes of Hellblade on Game Pass and be like, "This ain't for me," and then turn it off and never go back. So the completion rate will plummet.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see that happening. The God of War thing, I really hate that that's the comparison that we landed on. And I know,
Hmm.
like, I'm guilty of it too because visually it looked that way. We've talked about these things for the
Well, so
past.
it's like Nordic stuff,
Right.
right? Like that's kind of how we got there, I
Yeah,
think.
we've talked about it for the past 3 or 4 years, and now it's been built up to where, this is Xbox's God of War. And like, oh man, if you go in expecting that, you're gonna get like an emotional, psychological disappointment is what you're gonna
Mm,
end up with. And
yeah,
like we've got to reset that expectation. And the unfortunate reality is you can't do that. It's out, the cat's out of the bag. You're gonna have a hard time.
yeah. People have been hearing about this so much that they
Yeah.
expect. Like there were a lot of people thinking this is going to be the big holiday game for
Mhm.
Xbox, and they're clearly a different plan in mind. So May 21st, we'll get to play Hellblade 2. I'm super excited. Still my most anticipated game of the year, to be
Same.
honest. And just a quick note that the original Hellblade was also only digital only for a year, and then it got a physical release, and it was $30 at launch. So,
Mm.
you know, we'll see. We got a surprise fifth game that wasn't on the docket. Square Enix showed up for some reason to deep dive into Visions of Mana, and I gotta say, I like the way this game looks. I This is probably the segment and the next one that I was like the least tuned into. Primarily because it was in Japanese and I was trying to work, but also like I'm already sold on Visions of Mana, so I
Yeah.
didn't really need more information about this one. Also, why is Square at an Xbox showcase?
I mean, it's cool that they're there. The fact that we actually did get Squared an Xbox showcase in the way that they were is really neat. I'm not a Visions of Mana like hype guy. I'm also not somebody who's ever played another Mana game. I know they said they've made 17 to date, but
That's
checking out the
crazy. I can name
gameplay,
two. I can name two.
you're better than me. What Secrets of
Secret
Mana sounds
and
right.
Trials.
Yeah, okay, so you've got those two. But like looking at the gameplay, I'm willing to dive in and give it a shot. Is it weird to say that I like the fact that it's not announced for Game Pass right now? Like, I think that we've got to kind of like regain ownership over the idea that you can just show off a game at a developer direct or an Xbox event, and the expectation isn't that it's on Game Pass. Like, that's
Mm.
okay. You know what I mean?
So I I feel 90% confident that this game is on Game Pass and they just haven't announced it yet.
Which would be fine as well.
I feel like Xbox, this is one of they're definitely got the marketing for this game, apparently. I was under the impression that developer directs were strictly first party, and this has kind of shattered that that expectation, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to bring up, and I want to talk about the after we get through the topics. I want to talk about the format and kind of break that down a little bit with you.
Mhm.
But it was very weird seeing them come out of left field, and the way that they announced it was really interesting. Like the pop up on the screen of like unknown user has entered the chat, and then you add them to the call is what they're effectively
Mhm.
doing, and then all of a sudden it's Square Enix. So I don't know if that was recognition this is weird and won't happen often, or if this is now just a showcase. This is Xbox doing a showcase for smaller games. I don't know.
Is it Xbox first party and partners that they have marketing rights with?
Yeah, I
Which
mean, that could be it.
I think it's great that Visions of Mana gets this sort of highlight on the Xbox platform, because this isn't something that normally happened.
Yeah, I think it's neat, like I said, to see Square here and have a presence there. I think that it's okay that the game isn't coming to Game Pass. Very well could. I'm fine that they didn't announce anything here and set that expectation. And it's also cool that it's coming out in summer. I know that there's a lot of people excited about that game, and so to have that kind of release date or release time frame drop at an Xbox event also elevates the overall experience of being there and watching the show.
Now get the the Mana collection on Xbox.
True.
Oxide up next with Era History Untold. All I wrote is it looks like Civ coming out fall 2024. This game objectively is not for me. Like,
Kevin,
I
it's
know.
Aura.
Aura. Is it? I thought it was supposed to be Era, like the era of time.
Yes, I thought so too, but it's Aura according to the call, or the developer direct.
What
yes.
do they know?
Yeah, what do they know? They just make the game. They don't know how to say the name. For me, also the same exact thing. Now, I think it was in the XCP Discord. It could have been on Twitter or Threads or something, but people were talking about how I'm going to give this game a shot. You know, I want to see more of what this game is before I write it off, because I know I'm not a strategy games guy. And immediately, like the first 2 minutes of this, or the first 60 seconds of this section, they were like, we took everything we loved about Civ 5. And then immediately I'm like, all right, tapping through it, because I know I'm not. So I honestly skipped this part entirely, because I know this is just not my game. I'm never going to look at this. If I see this menu and I know what it's going to be and they're talking about, nah, I'm out. I'm good. Thanks. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm sure people have a good time. Not for me.
I feel like these games always do well and hit with the player, but like, it's just not me. And you could show me 5 trailers of different games, and I couldn't tell you which the difference was. They all look the same to me.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one that was Humankind that came out last year.
I tried playing. That's the last one I tried playing, and I played it for like 40 minutes. I was like, I am so lost.
Yeah. I started playing Humankind, dropped it. Whenever we had that period of time where I'm going to say it. We had that period of time where everybody thought or acted like they liked Age of Empires for like 5 weeks. And like Age of Empires 2 remastered or whatever dropped. And then Age of Empires 4 came out, and everybody pretended they liked it and then just dropped. So, huge fan. So I gave it a shot then. Nah, still not for me. So I'm skipping this one. I'm not going to lie to myself again. Nah.
All right. Closing out the show, Indiana Jones. We got our first gameplay trailer. It's officially called Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, as the leaks suggested. Bit of a interesting one here for me. It's first person, Sam.
It is. That was shocking.
I did not expect that. I did see some people say it's a mix of first and third. The third seems to be like when you're climbing up ropes, or like probably doing some sort of like built-in elements to the game. It's set between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. Now, if you've seen Indiana Jones, I'm sure that means something to you as someone that has never seen the movies. I don't know what that means.
1937. It is set in 1937. So slightly pre-Nazi era of Indiana Jones, but still in that golden age.
So we're not punching Nazis?
I'm sure you'll punch like pre-Nazis. You'll have people that feel like they represent the Nazis. I mean, and if you look in the trailer, the main villain guy at the beginning, you're like, wow, he has like a Nazi look to him based on what I've seen from like the small circular glasses. That's a Nazi like looking.
It's a trope.
Thing. So they're trying to hit those tropes. I think they're trying to do that.
Coming this year. How are you feeling? You believe them? You believe them? First of all,
I do not. No. That's one thing coming out of it that I thought was really weird is like, if you are saying general 2024 in January 2024, well, we know it's not coming out before June. You know it's not coming out before June. If you thought it was going to be fall or winter 2024, why wouldn't you say fall or winter? I think this is like, we're putting 2024 because that's what the project timeline says. But in reality, my gut says April, May of next year, like a 5-month delay. I could easily see that. But I'm also coming at it from a perspective of this is an Xbox that we've seen constantly delay stuff over the course of the past 5 years. If we're out of that COVID development churn, then maybe this is a 2024 game. That'd be great. I would love that. I'm just not conditioned to expect that.
I think what this trailer showed me is that they've been working on this game a lot longer than we thought. Like the reveal, the announcement trailer, I should say, wasn't that long ago, and they definitely were working on it before that because I think the game looks great. Like
Mhm.
visually, it's stunning. I think it's an absolutely beautiful game. You have Troy Baker doing the voice of Indiana Jones. I think he was doing a very good job in the trailer. It actually looked really fun to me. Like they showed off some whip combat. I was excited to play this game. They were talking about the different play styles. Like you can use the whip and you can go stealth mode. It's not all just like I'm gonna whip the guy. You could whip the air, distract someone, sneak by him. Like that is the kind of gameplay mechanic that I really appreciate because I love that stuff in games. So I'm not an Indiana Jones fan, but the game looks awesome to me. I'm excited. I hope it is 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things that I had thought of coming off of this, and it's something I've seen floating around out there too, is that we talked about, is Indiana Jones still relevant? Like, is this still an IP that's worthwhile for somebody to make a game about in 2024? And it's not that it's an Indiana Jones game and it has to be a good Indiana Jones game. It's that if they deliver on a good action adventure game that just so happens to feature Indiana Jones, then it's going to be a big win. Like that's what
Mhm.
they need to do. And going into it, you and I both thought it was going to be a third person game.
Yeah.
Thinking back on it now, Machine Games specializes in really good FPS mechanics. Like Wolfenstein feels great to play. And so coming off of that, to be able to apply like the whip mechanics and things like that and build this Indiana Jones game that plays to Machine Game strengths rather than making them do something that they might not be equipped to do just because graphically they could do it is probably going to pay off for them. I mean, I'm feeling really confident.
Yeah, I think what they showed really got people like so at least it got me excited. I think they've clearly put a lot of thought and effort into why it's first person. It didn't
Mhm.
feel off watching the game. I said I was in Carpool's Twitch and they're like third or first person. I was like, it's gonna be third person. And then when it wasn't, I was like, really? It's first person. But after they showed me, I was like, I'm good with first person. Now you don't need to convince me. You've sold me on it.
Yeah, I was also thinking through it too because Troy Baker's doing the
The
he's playing
voices.
he's doing the voice of
Tony
Indiana.
Todd's also in it.
Wait, who?
Tony Todd?
Oh, Venom guy?
Yeah.
Nice. Um, I haven't looked at the full cast or anything, but thinking through like Troy Baker, being Indiana, but the fact that like I'm assuming they're using Harrison Ford's facial capture to do all of the stuff, right? I mean, I haven't read anything else about it, but
I haven't seen anything about it. He looks like
yeah,
clearly that's what they're going for.
like it has Harrison Ford's like little smirk that he does with Indiana Jones. Like clearly it's based off of Ford's Indiana Jones, and so keeping the game first person limits the amount of replication you've got to do to constantly make him look like Harrison Ford. And so
Mhm.
not that it's an out because I don't think that it's an out, but it definitely solves that problem of like, wow, this guy constantly has to look like Harrison Ford for an audience that's very intimately aware of what he looks like, and now you don't have to deal with that problem.
So with Hellblade, like our conversation about Hellblade, people reassessing their expectations for that game. If Indiana Jones hits in 2024, which I assume would be their big holiday game, like for me, this is their blockbuster for this year, if anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if this game lands at the very beginning or middle of November, banger holiday release, like
Hmm.
it's gonna I don't want to say dominate, but it's going to give Xbox the first big AAA first party game at a holiday release that's on that level of like everybody will be interested in playing that. I really think that this could be the one for them, and that would be very, very impressive.
Ghostly March asks, do you think they'll have an extremely hard mode like in Wolfenstein? I don't know. I won't be playing on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see the difficulty cranked up. I think it'll be interesting to see how they balance the gameplay because one thing that really stood out to me is like it is a puzzle game. It is a first person shooter. It is
A stealth
a
game.
stealth game. Yeah. And they've got all these different elements, but I really liked what the one of the presenters called out is that you've got puzzles that are hidden in the environments that aren't directly called out to you. So you really do feel like you're playing as Indiana Jones of going through and saying, "Oh, there's weird carvings in these walls. What if I whipped these 3 points? All of a sudden, a door opens up and you've got something to grab, or whatever that might look like. The fact that that's in the game, I love that kind of stuff. So the difficulty is one thing, and you can play this like a traditional machine games game from what they said, but that's not necessarily what you're meant to do. Like they encourage you to be stealthy and try new things. So lots of replayability I'm hearing from that. Lots of different gameplay variety. So I really, really hope it's good.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it. So, in my opinion, Xbox's 2024 is now I thought it was good before, and now it's stacked for me. Like I could not expect Indiana Jones to capture me like it did. But I asked people on our Discord what they thought. The good sir wrote in. He said, "Wish we got an indie or two, but we did get a great look at Indiana Jones, which is almost as nice." In all seriousness, Avowed looks awesome, and I'm hoping it's an epic, meaty RPG. Hellblade 2 coming out May 21st. So excited for that game. Last and not least, Visions of Mana is hype. Secret of Mana is one of my favorites from when I was a wee lad, and this game looks to capture that similar feel. Sam, we're going to wrap up our discussion about the developer direct, but I wanted to get your overall thoughts about the format, if there's things you think should be improved. I know you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming into it, even looking at the announcement, we have Xbox Developer Direct 24. So that implies these are annual at this point. So it's not going to be a Nintendo Direct style situation where you get one every 3 or 4 months or so to keep you in the loop on what's going on. So these are not the quarterly updates.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned earlier, Square Enix is now involved. So is it like a first party and third party close partner marketing agreement showcase? I feel like it's a good setup for a presentation, but I wish there were more of them, but also is there enough content to fill more of them? I think that's kind of where I'm at. I like the show. I just don't know if the cadence is right for it to be annual.
Interesting. I was gonna say I'm good with it being annual just because I think kicking the year off with kind of a roadmap, which is kind of what they've done this year and last year for our January developer direct, kind of lays out here's what's coming this year from Xbox and apparently now their partners. And then June we get the showcase, the big, here's some surprises, here's things coming next year, the year before, some announcements that we've never heard of before. I think that's awesome. My concern is like, do we need another one? Because where would it go after that? If you put it in the fall, like you're getting close to the Game Awards, but we also are just coming off Summer Games Fest, which is like kind of stretches or like can be in August sometimes. It's weird. Like
That's true.
the industry, I don't know if it has enough room. I think state of plays and Nintendo Directs are different from this because that kind of is more sizzle reel, like just we're gonna show a trailer, we're gonna show a trailer, we're gonna show a trailer. These are more deep dives with the studios and kind of updates.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good call out of that. It is a deeper dive. It's a conversation. It's a behind the scenes look. This is for the deeper gaming audience. So, with that kind of thing in mind, I do agree that it probably has a pretty good yearly cadence. And also, playing devil's advocate to myself, setting this thing in January and having it be about your 4 big games of the year. That's a good way to set the expectation early and kind of own the conversation ahead of rumors that start to churn up going into May and June and going into the fall even of what this year and the following year have in store. So yeah, food for thought, good conversations.
We're still waiting for Towerborn too. Towerborn didn't show up.
We
I thought
are.
that was going to be the 5th game when like that thing showed up. I was like, oh, Towerborn, and then nope. Visions
Yeah,
of Mana.
interesting to see that. I wonder when that will end up. Do we have a release like date or time frame? Spring?
All the rumors said it was supposed to be early 2024.
I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to focus on that for something that had this many eyes on it and this much hype. But that could have been a really, really good, like, hey, it's available now.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
it would have been.
Yeah.
No shadow drop, which I think that's like, will there be one next year? They'll do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So,
I'm cool with no shadow drop. I don't
me
feel
too.
like the show was any lesser because it didn't have one.
No, I'm still super excited. But that is our thoughts on the developer direct. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to story number 2. Game Pass update. So available right now, we have Those Who Remain for cloud, console, PC. We have Turnip Boy Robs a Bank for cloud, console, and PC. We got F123 for console and PC. January 19th, we get Pal World for cloud, console, and PC. January 25th, we get Go Mecha Ball for cloud, console, PC. January 30th, Brotato for cloud, console, PC. February 2nd, Persona 3 Reload for cloud, console, PC. February 6th, a new chart. I don't know how to say that, for cloud, console, and PC. Obviously, my big one here, Persona 3 Reload, one of my most anticipated games of the year. Unfortunately, it's coming out right after Infinite Wealth, so I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but I will be maybe chipping away on my lunch breaks here and there, and then Infinite Wealth can be my home game. But Sam, I know you wanted to talk about Pal World. I got some thoughts, but I want to know why are you going to be checking this one out?
So I'm checking out Pal World number one. My fiance's interested in it. She's a big like Pokemon person, and so she always grew up playing those games. And so now we finally have a game both of us can overlap on. She likes Pokemon, I like shooting things. So now we're gonna play Pokemon with guns and just see what happens. But beyond that, it's just an interesting concept, like if anything, it's a throwaway like game preview, couple of hours where I'm like, all right, let's catch some stuff, shoot some stuff. I know there's like you can build factories, you can rob endangered species of pals and keep them for yourself from like wildlife preservation sites. It's just a weird game, and I like checking out weird games, and it's going to be a nice palate cleanser coming off of games that make me angry, like Prince of Persia and Liza P, that are very challenging with platforming and fighting. So I think it's going to be a palate cleanser for me to go into whatever the next thing might be.
So I'm conflicted about Pal World. When I initially saw the trailers, I thought like I'll try this out. Yeah, for sure. It looks interesting. Pokemon with guns. The more I've learned about it, and now I've watched some people play Pal World, I don't know if I can play this game. There are a lot more survival elements in it than I first expected. It's very heavily a survival game. And what I mean by that is I watched a video of a person that needed food, so they beat one of their pals to death with a stick and then ate him. And I don't know if I'm about that life. I was kind of hoping it was just I'm going to catch some cute critters, and then like they have guns, and we'll go battle some other critters. Seems to be more like you enslave them to make weapons for you, and then when they no longer are useful to you, you murder them.
Yeah, I was going to read you a section of the Steam page that stood out to me when I was making a video on this morning, because it says, let's see, where is the yes, no, hold on, yes, factories and automation. Letting pals do the work is the key to automation. Build a factory, place a pal in it, and they'll keep working as long as they're fed, until they're dead, that is. And then there was also one, let's see, hold on. What was it? It was something that was horrible that I was very, oh yes. Building structures. Want to build a pyramid? Put an army of pals on the job. Don't worry. There are no labor laws for pals.
It's
what?
So I totally get what the developers are going for here. They want to acknowledge the actual messed up nature of Pokemon,
100%.
which is dog fighting. Like we are fighting them. But and when I sent this to my friends group chat, I was like, guys, you want to play some Pal World? I hear it's got like 32 like multiplayer dedicated servers, apparently not on Xbox though, so 4-player co-op, I think Xbox. And then the more they've looked into it, like my one friend is very disturbed. He's like, I flat out refuse to play this game just at the thought of killing Pokemon. And I'm kind of getting to his point. I'm like, I don't know if I would enjoy this game at all.
Yeah, as somebody who has zero emotional connection to Pokemon, I think I can probably grin and bear it because like I don't care about the background of Pokemon. It's also going to be interesting to see the commentary on like factory jobs and churning and like you said, the dogfighting elements of Pokemon that are thrown in there. I'm out of anything, I'm curious more than anything to see what this game ends up being and how good it actually is.
The one thing I need you to answer for me if you play it is if you're playing, I assume you're going to play co-op with your fiance.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you eat her pals? That's all I want to know. Can you kill and eat her pals?
I will let you know. I also feel uncomfortable with that question. The way that it's phrased makes me feel weird. I don't know, but I will let you know.
That's all I got.
I will let you know if I can eat my fiance's pals. I will let you know.
Anything else on this list sticking out to you?
Let's see. Brotato is one that I have wanted to play for a while. If I'm not mistaken, this is actually a game that was developed by a Twitch streamer that used to play these
Mm.
top-down dual thumbstick kind of games, and so he put this together with a team, I'm pretty sure. But it came out on Steam a couple of years ago, and it's been really well received if you're a fan of those like Enter the Gungeon style games. This is one that I've wanted to play, so I'm really glad to see that one coming. But beyond that, I always lie to myself, much like Age of Empires, and say I'm going to check out Persona. Nah, I'm not. 2024 new resolution. I'm not going to lie to myself anymore. I'm not going to be playing Persona, but have fun. I can't wait to hear more about it on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. Brotato, I think Phil Spencer talked about how he spent a lot of time playing this, and part of me is like, do you sometimes just pick the games you like and like, let's get an Xbox version? Come on over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is probably how a lot of the Game Pass games come to be. But also, if you don't have Game Pass, it's $5 on Steam, so
Oh,
you are.
it could be Vampire Survivors quality. You don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
it very well could. I mean, it's got overwhelmingly positive on Steam right now, so banger
great,
coming out.
awesome. All right, well, let's keep it rolling. We got two more kind of meaty stories to go through, so a little longer show today for everyone. We're going to talk about some comments from Satya Nadella speaking during Microsoft's recent shareholders meeting. When asked about the health and future of Xbox, Satya responds, "Quote: After the closure of Activision Blizzard King, we think that now we have the ability to do what we always set out to do, which is build great games and deliver great games across all platforms, which is Xbox, consoles, PC, and mobile and cloud. We are excited about the future and want to do our very best work. It is a core business for us." He also spoke to Bloomberg this week and added, "We love gaming. In fact, Microsoft Flight Simulator was born even before Windows, but we were number 3, number 4. Now with Activision, I think we have a chance of being a good publisher, quite frankly, on Sony, Nintendo, PCs, and Xbox." So I just have to call it out right off the start, and then I'll throw it over to you. I've seen a lot of people cherry picking parts of this quote to fit their narrative, specifically that Bloomberg one, where they leave out the "now with Activision, I think we have a chance of being a good publisher on the other platforms." They just put, "I think we have a good chance to be a good publisher," and make it seem like Xbox is throwing in the towel, going third party publisher. They're saying, which we've all known, Activision Blizzard King games are going to be on other platforms.
Correct. Yeah. And I saw something else that pulled this exact same thing. A lot of coverage was talking about how Ubisoft said that they want to get gamers comfortable with not owning their games.
Yeah, we're talking about that in the next story.
Yeah, well, we'll save that. Then I'll save my spiel for that. But with this in particular, yes, Activision games are going to continue coming to PlayStation and Nintendo. They're going to continue publishing stuff on the Switch. That was part of the agreement to get them to buy Activision. Like, these are not new revelations, people. We need to move past this like tribalistic, Xbox is dying, going third party. It's just tiring. And I say that as somebody who's like, I haven't been on Twitter more than 3 minutes in the past 2 weeks, and like I have no desire to. But it's just I know what's going on. I can feel it, the conversations that are going down. Just enjoy your games, man. There's so much yelling about things that don't matter.
Yeah, it's a little exhausting. I do just get upset about the disingenuous nature when people take quotes out of context or try to spin things like that comment, where clearly that next sentence is about Activision, which was the subject of the last sentence. Like, nothing he has said here is new. Like, we've known their strategy has been Xbox put the third party or put specific games on other consoles, right? They've said case by case basis. Bethesda, when they acquired them, we know Call of Duty has agreements to stay on there. I'm sure other live service, Diablo, Overwatch, maybe even some other single player games that like have a legacy, as they've said. Like, this is not new information. Everyone, and especially now with those Sea of Thieves rumors and Hi-Fi Rush that we talked about like last week or the week before, I think we're just in this moment where everyone is looking at every single piece of word, like any word said that they can pick out, and trying to spin it to fit their narrative.
Yeah, 100%. I think that really people are overlooking the real story is that Satya says after the closure of ABK, they're shutting them down. Deal's done.
Yeah, that's what I
They're
had.
closing.
Yeah.
No more Call of Duty. No headline. Where are the headlines at, huh? What's going on with that?
We spent $70 billion just to be like, nah.
Yeah, pull a little Elon. We're buying it just to kill it.
Just to
That's how much money we've got.
I can't wait for them to rename it to X.
Yes, yeah. ABK, nah, other letters coming soon.
Well, you talked about it, Sam. So let's jump into our final story for the day. I want to talk about our subscription services in trouble. This comes partially from a recent interview with Ubisoft's director of subscriptions, Felipe Temble. They spoke about how millions have subscribed to Ubisoft's cloud-based streaming service, Ubisoft Plus, and expects this number to increase, but stressed that in order for that shift to happen, quote, one of the things, or sorry, in order for that to happen, a shift has to occur. Quote, one of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVDs, having and owning their games. What a concept. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collections or DVD collections. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. It's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game. Matt Piscatella, video game analyst over at Circana, reports that gaming subscription growth has flattened and subservices on console and PC platforms account for only 10% of total video game content spending in the United States. And finally, in an article by IGN, Rebecca Valentine, senior games analyst, I forgot to put his name in here, but you can go read the article. They stated, we're seeing slowing adoption of Xbox Game Pass, even though Microsoft will claim otherwise, thanks to repositioning of Xbox Live Gold as Xbox Game Pass Core. Our forecast estimates total Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, excluding Core/Live, to be at 33.3 million by the end of 2023, which represents subscriber growth of 13%, down 15% in 2022. A lot of information there, Sam. I know you wanted to start with the Ubisoft one, so you want to tackle that one first. Let's talk about subscription services.
So, talking about this Ubisoft quote in particular, I saw it taken out of context, and of course, everybody just reads the headlines in 2024, so it is what it is. But saying that Ubisoft wants you to get comfortable with not owning your games. And on one hand, you could read it that way, and there's some truth there. But at the same time, this is coming from the director of subscriptions, whose job it is to make you not want to own games. So a little bit of a bias on his side there. But on top of that, the quote, and I couldn't find it fully online, but I was reading through it, and he's talking about comparing it to the rise of Spotify for the music industry.
Yep.
And so thinking back 15 years, I spent thousands of dollars building up an iTunes library by actually buying stuff through Apple, and I will never in my life open that library again because I have Spotify like a normal person. And like that's the shift that they're talking about whenever they're talking about shifting away from feeling comfortable not owning your games or getting comfortable not owning your games. It is moving into where you feel comfortable having the subscription that gives you access to the things rather than buying them outright. Where I have a problem is when that option goes away. That's what I like having, is the option to be able to buy. Like, I am uncomfortable with the fact that physical games are going away because of the fact that I like the option to buy physical games, even if I might not always do that. And it's the same thing with a subscription. If I want to pay $50 to buy Hellblade 2, sure, cool. Or subscribe to Game Pass. Either one, I just like having the option. So I'm not for a full subscription future. And I say that as somebody who loves subscriptions. Like, I love the subscriptions that I've got, but I don't think it's healthy to lean fully into it. So that's my take on that. I think the quote's a little bit blown out of proportion, but there are some valid points.
Well, I think Matt Piscatella's quote, where he says that 10% of total video game content is subscription services, kind of illustrates your point that, like, you are not alone. The majority of consumers in this space haven't adopted the subscription first model. Like, that is not the primary way people consume this medium, and by the looks of it, it's not going to be for a very long time. I very much treat subscription services in gaming as a supplemental thing. Like, I think Xbox Game Pass adds an crazy amount of value. Like, it saves me if I was to buy Hellblade, Avowed, and Indiana Jones this year, for example, not to mention like maybe Towerborn, like, I'm saving hundreds of dollars by paying to Game Pass because I get a ton of other games and those ones right off the bat. I think that is where I find value in it. I personally don't really have that much attachment to physical media. Um, I would be completely okay without physical media, but I understand people want it. I'm very much in support of still having it around for those consumers, because I treat digital purchases as like I own it, and I know technically I don't own it, but in my
Right.
mind, it's good enough for me. Now, if you offered me a subscription service that says every game that comes out, no matter what, is in this subscription service, I would subscribe day one, because for me, I'm very much once I play it, the chances of me going back are so slim. Like that is fine with me. I
Yeah.
know majority of people don't have that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way where, like with Prince of Persia right now, I've rolled credits on it, it's done. Will I go back and play it? Maybe if I like have an itch to scratch, but beyond that, I'm probably never going to pick this game up again because I've rolled credits on it. And that's the way that I typically play my games. And with that in mind, that's why subscriptions work for me, is because I am playing for the memories and the experience for that one
Hmm.
time rather than continuing to play it over and over again. My concern is stuff like I brought it up on a video about Riders Republic, where this is a game that is effectively always online. It's the Ubisoft game that has like BMX and things that, for people that don't know, you've got like extreme sports in there. And so there is an offline mode and you can play it offline, but there are no races, there are no challenges. The core of the game is multiplayer. And so in 10 years, once that game is shut down, it's gone. Like you're not
Yeah.
going to have that anymore. And so from a preservation point of view, even if you own something digitally or physically, I have a physical copy of Riders Republic. It doesn't make a difference. Just the way the games are built today, it's going away either way. So if that's the mindset and we're on this doomsday thing, I'll just subscribe with my subscription, not own anything, and just lean into it. And I don't
Hmm.
like it, but like, I'm not going to fight the trend of what's going to happen inevitably.
Yeah, now that point I definitely get. I don't want to see a future where we have a bunch of only online games that eventually disappear and they're never to be found again. Like we see this with the movies and TV subscriptions where like certain shows are just gone from existence now. They
Yeah.
wrote them off as tax write-offs. If that was the gaming industry and they were like this game was here and now we're never, like, it's gone forever because we took it off the subscription service, I don't like that. People would always bring up an example, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, those remasters they did a few years ago, and how they got delisted. And I was like, yes, but I bought them and I can download them whenever I want. Like you
Yeah.
can't continue to buy them, but they live in perpetuity on my account. Like for
Right.
at least for now, as I'm not aware of any game that's been delisted and then ripped out of your account that you can't even download it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any. Forza Horizon, the older games are the ones that come to mind for me, where whether you own a physical copy or a digital copy of Forza Horizon 3, the music and the car license is expired. And
Hmm.
so you can't buy them anymore, but you can still play them.
Yeah.
So like that's fine. I totally get that. It's like you said, the live service elements of like, oh God, in 50 years, Fortnite's not going to be a thing. Like you literally won't be able to play it. And right now it's the biggest thing on the planet. Like that's wild to think about,
That is, yeah.
where there, all of these big, huge games, Warzone, gone. You don't have a physical copy of any of that ever, anywhere. It's just going to be vaporware at that point.
Hmm. Ghostly March in the chat says, if I wasn't so invested into the digital ecosystems on Xbox and PlayStation, I might consider more physical purchases like I do on Switch with some of the limited editions, but it just feels different. And I very much have that same mindset, but I've said this to other people where as soon as Nintendo shows me that they will respect my digital purchases going forward, and what I mean by that is they're going to carry it from generation to generation, which they haven't done yet. And I'm
Right.
hoping the Switch 2 shows that like games are linked to your account now. And like going forward, we're just going to carry that through kind of the Xbox and now the PlayStation model that they've adopted over there. Like when I think about PlayStation, Xbox, I am 100% certain that like whatever Xbox's next console is, my OG Xbox, my 360, my Xbox One, my Series, like all those digital games will play on that console. My PS4, my PS5 games will play on the PS6, right? I don't have that current feeling where I'm like, my Nintendo Switch games will play on the Switch 2, the Switch
Yeah.
3. Like, we need to build that trust with Nintendo before I switch to digital for them. Because right now I am physical for them. I buy it, beat their games, resell them. Like that is my Nintendo habit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it'll be really interesting to see if other companies, I mean, looking at Google Stadia, for example, anything you bought on Google Stadia is gone. Now, admittedly, they refunded all purchases that were ever made
Mhm.
on Google Stadia. They're making that controller open source. I don't know what the proper term is,
Yeah.
compatible with other things. So they did the right thing. But how many companies realistically with your digital library are going to refund all of the purchases ever made?
Oh no.
That's not going to happen. So there will come a day where I don't know. I don't think Epic's a good example, but for the purposes of this, if the Epic Game Store were to shut down and you've bought all of your games on the Epic Game Store, and they're like, sorry, it's gone. You can download ROMs, but like that, whatever it looks like, you can add them to your other library, something like they will not exist in that way in the future. So it's weird to think about that kind of potential thing. I don't know. It could also be a doomsday theorist in me. I don't know.
Well, yeah, well, because in it is interesting because in my mind, I just assume well, Epic Game Store is going to be around forever, like as long as there's PC and like Steam too. Like
Hmm.
I in my mind, Valve isn't going anywhere, and we don't technically know that. It would take a lot of bad things to happen to the industry for that to occur. But I have the same feelings about like, oh, Xbox isn't going anywhere, PlayStation isn't going anywhere, Nintendo isn't going anywhere. They just need to fix their services, but. I get the mindset.
Yeah, yeah, it's a weird time. I mean, back in the day, did people think like, my Dreamcast? Nah, they're locked in for like 5 of these bad boys. And then here we are, I don't know.
Yeah, but back in the day, if you bought the game, like they didn't have these concerns, they
Yeah,
didn't have
yeah.
these. I do want to highlight. Apparently, Xbox Game Pass is reportedly like estimated 33.3 million subscribers. I think the last official number we got was 25. So it's gone up a good amount. I'm wondering if they've hit, and Matt Piscatella kind of confirms they have. They've kind of hit a ceiling there for their subscriber growth.
Yeah, I mean, they will hit a point where the number of people that are playing Xbox and the number of people that subscribe to Game Pass are just going to plateau. And we probably are getting there because of how long Game Pass has been around and how kind of ingrained it is in the Xbox ecosystem. So now the question becomes, how do they pivot? How do they grow? And I think that that's also changing because of the acquisitions like ABK, where that's totally changed the dynamic of their financials to
Hmm.
where maybe concerns they had before aren't concerns now. I don't know what that looks like behind the scenes, but I'm gonna let them worry about that and push those pencils.
I just want to know what the number is after the Call of Duty games start dropping in. That's like
Oh,
once we get those consistently, then I'll take the numbers like
yeah.
this is the stopping point.
I mean, if you want to boost those numbers, announce all of the legacy Call of Duty games on Game Pass and bring back that 3 months for $1 deal or whatever that crazy thing was that they were doing there for a long time. You're gonna shoot up like insanity. It's gonna be crazy.
Well, that is all the news we have for this week, but we do have one last listener question from Sam Heaney over on our No Limit show. It says, regardless of what is shown or not shown at the direct, he clearly wrote this beforehand. Do you expect that if there is ever an upcoming port of an Xbox game to another platform, the direct would be the place to show it? Dev Focus talking passionately about expanding the market reach of their games where Xbox can control the messaging and still own the announcement, or do you expect a Nintendo Direct or State of Play to be the primary home of such announcements?
I think that for Nintendo, it would be at a direct. I think that Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch at a direct feels like a good fit. I do not think PlayStation would allow an Xbox game, even if it was coming to PS5, to be at their state of play. I think that that would be more of like hey, here's a Twitter announcement retweeted by the PlayStation account, and then we're just going to let that ride. Just because I think that rivalry, especially for the social media teams, is still
Mm.
so strong. I don't think they would let it fly at their main show.
Yeah, probably a blog post for PlayStation, but
Hmm.
no, I mean, I, I get what Sam is asking, because if it's on a developer direct, then Xbox gets to control. Like this is why we're doing it. Like they get
Hmm.
to communicate with the fans directly, hopefully alleviate people's concerns. Like it's not going to be all of our games. It's like just this one for this specific reason. Um, I would be completely fine if Hi-Fi Rush showed up at a Nintendo Direct. I think that would be like a hype moment.
Yeah.
state of play, again, like if it showed up at a state of play, I'd also be fine with that. I think I think if something like Starfield just showed up at a state of play, that we'd have to ask some questions about what the hell's going on. But there's levels to these things.
Yeah, I feel like for me, the reason that I say that it would probably be at the partner events, like let's say PlayStation is on board, like at that point, Xbox would want to market to the PlayStation audience. Xbox would want to market to the Nintendo audience. And so to just make the announcement during an Xbox Direct would trickle down. But for the hardcore Nintendo fans that are out there, you're not going to tap them and say, hey, Hi-Fi Rush is coming out for Switch directly, but through the Nintendo Direct. And I feel like the same thing for PlayStation. So it depends on how much they're willing to just go all out in this hypothetical scenario to directly market their game versus controlling that narrative, like you said. But interesting times we're living in where that could be the thing. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait till Nintendo Direct and State of Play happens so we can all freak out about. Oh, I've heard Hi-Fi Rush. This is the announcement time. But Sam, that's all we have for today's show. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Threads, on TikTok, That's a mint. Delicious mint. Yeah, I'm JamPackSam everywhere. If you've got content there, you can find me making it there. Really good conversations on Threads, by the way. I know Save the Game Media, kind of holding the spot over there just in case things start to go weird. But Threads is really great for conversations. I just want to give a shout out to anybody watching that made it to the end of this show. Like I've had tons of awesome interactions over there, and it really feels like a good community, especially today with like the Direct. Just a lot of good energy. So I really appreciated the time over there.
Yeah, I have made a Save the Game Media Threads account, everyone. If you want to go follow us over there, we're on Twitter as well at Save Game Media. I'm going to try to get a little more involved with the Threads community, start building up what's going on over there. I'm the Muffin Man on Twitter. It's a 1-7I and 0-7A. Follow us there to stay up to date with all the latest. Come join the Discord. But until next time, we'll see you.